America's election headquarters.
It's a Thursday. Welcome, everybody. America's election headquarters. Good to have you with us today. I'm Bill Hemmer.
Hi, everybody, and I'm Megan Kelly, and this is your place for all things politics. Let's get right to it. New controversy tonight. Just when you thought it was over, Barack Obama's longtime pastor making headlines again, and they are quite something. This time revealing that Reverend Wright's church is reprinting pro-Hamas, anti-Israel writings in congregation bulletins just in the last year, one calling Israel an apartheid regime. Obama speaking out, saying the church was wrong in printing the article. But how will this new bombshell affect Obama among Jewish voters? And by the way, there is much more. With me now, Fox News contributor Juan Williams and radio talk show host Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson. Good evening.
Good to be with you, Megan.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so it's not just that, the pro-Hamas circular, but we learn now about the bashing on Italian Americans, and the quotes are pretty shocking. He talks about a public lynching Italian style. He talks about how the Italians look down their garlic noses at the Galileans. He suggests Italians are enemies of Jesus. Juan, let me start with you. How do we get past this? Is this going to reignite this whole controversy?
Well, it depends on whether or not the press, and you know, I think the media has been strongly pro-Obama in this contest, whether or not they pick up this or see it as simply a continuation of an old story. I think a lot of this is going to have real political impact. You mentioned, Megan, with the Jewish community, but this has been the problem, that people are, and we saw it this morning in an NBC Wall Street Journal poll, people are saying on the basis of the right controversy, not that they are buying off Obama, but they're taking a second look. And they're having questions about who he really is. What does he stand for? Why was he in that church for 20 years? Why did he never raise an objection? Did he never see the church bulletin? And much the way he said he had never heard any of the kind of racist rant that came from Reverend Wright previously. It'd be interesting to see what the reaction is, but also interesting to see whether or not the press plays it appropriately.
Right, indeed. And Reverend, is there any way, given this, now it's not just the Italians and it's not just the Jews, but he goes on in these writings about white supremacists across this country, suggesting that white supremacy is clearly in charge in government, that the world is controlled by white supremacy. Here you go. The government runs everything from the White House to the schoolhouse, from the Capitol to the Klan. White supremacy is clearly in charge. But Asa, like Jesus, refused to be defined by an oppressive government because he got his identity from an omnipotent God. How does Obama deal with this? I mean, is it more of the same, or is this a new controversy?
Well, Megan, God said that if you say you love him and hate your fellow man, then you are a liar and the truth is not in you. These black racist preachers are not men of God, even though they wear the title Reverend. There's a theme going through the black community now, and that is Jesus was a black man, and so they're using this so-called black liberation theology in order to prove that Jesus was black instead of white.
Reverend, is it plausible, given all these remarks, that Barack Obama did not know? He says, I knew he made some controversial comments, but I never heard the most inflammatory ones.
This is the same teaching as Louis Farrakhan, and I have to tell you, there is no way at all that you can sit in a church for 20 years and then call the preacher your uncle and he's your spiritual guide or your spiritual leader and not know what he is about. Barack is not being honest about that, and unless he denounced this man, disowned this man, we have to believe that he agrees with that, because, again, if a white preacher was saying the same identical thing with the same emotions, we would not tolerate it. Barack Obama would disown him, he would leave the church and disown it.
Juan, let me pick up on that Louis Farrakhan thing, because some of these writings that we're quoting from came out in this thing called Trumpet News Magazine, which Wright is the CEO of, his daughter publishes it, and he writes in it monthly. The November-December issue profiled Louis Farrakhan after they just gave him a Lifetime Achievement Award, and Wright calls... And Wright is honoring Louis Farrakhan. The magazine seems to think that Louis Farrakhan is some sort of hero, even though this guy called Judaism a gutter religion and called Jews bloodsuckers.
Well, look, you know what, Megan, right from the start, the Jewish community has had questions about Barack Obama's politics, about his commitment to Israel, his understanding of what's taking place in the Middle East, and the relationship between Israel and the Palestinians. This has been going on the internet for some time. It's been a backroom argument and conversation in the Jewish community. The news today that you are bringing to us about the kind of statements that Reverend Wright has allowed into the Trumpet magazine in his own writings and from the church bulletin, I think it's going to force the Jewish community to come out and make a more prominent and public stand on Barack Obama. And that, of course, could have impact in terms of the general conversation about whether Barack Obama is electable, which plays into Hillary Clinton's hands. Because she wants to say to the superdelegates, he may have a few more delegates at the end of the day, he may have a few more votes, but if you want to beat John McCain, you cannot count on Barack Obama withstanding the attacks that are sure to come from Republicans once they get this kind of information in hand.
But how about it, Reverend? Because these latest polls show that only, that 32% of the country think that he's already addressed this race issue, this Reverend Wright issue sufficiently, and they're ready to move on. So, what's your response to it?
Unfortunately, within the black community, from the age of 50 down, a lot of black young folks have been influenced with this type of teaching. You hear it in many other black churches. You hear it in the universities around the country. It's being taught in the public school system. And so they are agreeing with that. So that's why when Barack Obama goes along with this preacher without disowning him, or Jeremiah Wright and Louis Farrakhan and others are teaching this, they don't denounce it because they agree with it. And for a long time, it's been undercover. Thank God that it's coming out now, because I've been talking about this for 18 years, and I've left many black churches because the preachers were teaching racism from the pulpit.
It's interesting because the award given to Louis Farrakhan, the Lifetime Achievement, was called the Dr. Jeremiah A. Wright Jr. Trumpeter Award.
That's
that
right.
was given to the guy.
You hear a lot of the leadership not denouncing that, but trying to excuse it.
Yeah.
They're going along with it, and there's no way that you could be of love and be of hate. And these black racist preachers are of hate, so there's no excuse for it.
And we're going to have to leave it at that. Reverend, thanks so much for being here. Juan Williams, thanks to you, too.
You're welcome, Megan.
All right, they mentioned the new polling numbers now. Hillary Clinton's approval rating has dropped to 37%. Obama got a break about a week ago when Hillary Clinton's Bosnia scandal broke out. Everyone was focused on his own scandal at the time, involving his pastor and his mentor of 20 years. Reverend Wright might be trying to keep a low profile by canceling a number of events, but every time he turns up everywhere now, the cameras are there too, and so ultimately, how is that following Obama everywhere Barack Obama goes? Here now, at-large host Geraldo Rivera. Nice to see you, my friend.
You too, Bill.
Good evening to you.
Thanks.
He's done half a dozen national interviews in this past week, and every time the reporters want to know more about his relationship.
Well, I think that's fair. For instance, in January 2007, when Barack Obama announced he was going to seek the White House, he chose not to have Reverend Wright with him on the podium. What did he know in January 2007, and why did he only come forward and speak about Reverend Wright after the scandal broke? Clearly, they feared the Reverend Wright specter would rise up its ugly head, and it has indeed.
Yesterday, national television. Listen to how he addressed it in part here. Obama from yesterday afternoon.
I think that's fair game, in the sense that what my former pastor said was offensive, and I think that in politics, whether I was white, black, Hispanic, Asian, somebody would be trying to use it against me. And I do think that it is important to keep things in perspective.
Somebody would be trying to use it against me. Do you think that's the truth, or are people just looking to understand the relationship?
I believe you're right. People are looking to understand the relationship. I'm not afraid of black liberation theology as a past activist attorney. I'm used to it. I'm sure that Farrakhan and Reverend Wright have both done a lot of good things in their community. The problem is, what does Barack Obama believe? That really is what I'm interested in knowing. What is he someone who believes that black values are different than American values? He has to confront the substance of the issue.
Now, there are some who think this is played out, and the poll numbers reflect that.
You know what's going to happen?
I don't know if we know that just
He's
yet.
going to lose the Jewish vote. In July 2007, Wright published the Hamas manifesto in his pastoral notes and said this is another view, another take on the situation in the Middle East. I think the American Jews, the most reliable democratic voters there are going to be extremely frightened that it also in the pastoral note, it said the state of Israel in the state was in quotes. The state, the so-called state of Israel, in other words. I think that substantively speaking, that will affect him in a very real way if it comes to the general
election. Yeah, and conventional wisdom says exactly that, too. You're an attorney, and so is Megan.
I are. She is.
And we cannot allow you to get away without...
We got to ask you about this Naomi Campbell incident at Heathrow Airport. I'm sorry, but